all I've done here is search TI calculator. Okay, so all I did was I searched TI calculator um, into my app store, and I can see there's a lot of different options here, but most importantly, there's this graphing calculator X84. Okay, and it says designed for the TI-84. So that first one right there is a perfectly good calculator to use. Um, of course, like I said, typically it has some free type of piece to it, and then it'll say like to access different parts, you might have to pay. Um, but I think for the most part, it does everything that we want to do, even for the free version. Another one is Graph Calc 83. That's another one that'll do the basic information that we want. I'm actually going to be utilizing this X84 one for my demonstrations. I think it's nice and good. These are for iOS, and the truth is that if you have an Android, you can actually get probably better emulators or better graphing calculator applications than you can for the iOS for free, right? For free. So iOS typically ones charge you a little bit more because there's a little bit more gatekeeping in with Apple. Um, there's a lot more freely available ones on the Habit. So,
Mr.
yes.
I have an Android. I have an iPhone. I use that for my.
So I'm doing this is if you have an iPhone, you can get the app. If you have the actual calculator, ignore it all. Ignore everything I'm saying and use your actual TI-83 or TI-84 calculator. So if you have an actual calculator, use it.
I can check for my.
Well, you're talking about your calculator, or are you talking about?
I can check now calculator. What you mean?
Well,
What you mean?
what is that, Alex? Alex, you say? Okay, I gotta mute you. You can work with me afterwards to make sure that you can if yours works or doesn't work. We can talk about that. But basically, what I would do is if you have right now, go to your app store, download one, and use it. If you have a physical graphing calculator in your hands, that's by far number one the option you want to do, and everything that we will do, the button pressing will match over to the graphing calculator for the physical model. If you don't have one, basically what you need to do and spending your time today on is making sure that you find an application, work with me, office hours type of stuff. If we finish early and we dismiss, we can talk a little bit more one-on-one on those ones. So I'm using this Calc 84. Notice it has like some ads on the top, but it does have everything I want to do. All right. So there's like a little ad feature on the top. That's the only thing that kind of sucks about it because it was free, right? But the calculator part basically looks the same. Now, if I wanted to and I wanted to use the other one, that one looks a little bit more traditional as well. The difference between these two calculators, though, is that they utilize slightly different notations. The TI-83 model one, you have to understand a little bit more calculator work in terms of when you press something. So when I press stat and I go to calculate, and I'll put these steps a little bit more explicitly, and I go to one var stats, number one, and I'll put this in, like I said, a little bit more. When you look at it, it looks like this, all right? And we have to actually type in what the list is. So we would have to press like second and then the one button to get this L1. We don't actually press the letter one. I'm going to walk through this one. And then we close parentheses and then we hit enter. Now there's no data in here. That's why it said invalid. However, if I use an 84 and I do the same thing, I hit the stats button. I go over to calc. So I was here in edit. I go over to calc and I go to one var stats it looks like this. So it looks slightly different, and it asks you, what is the list? And notice that it already has my list as L1 as my default list. Same thing, I can hit second L1, I can hit second 1 and it will type that up. I can clear that, and I can hit second, and then the number 2, you see how it's blue on the top left corner of the 2? That means if I hit second and then the number 2, it comes up list 2. And it also has what's known as a frequency list, which I'm going to explain during part of the lesson, how frequency lists are used and how they are helpful for us for large quantities of data. Okay? So I'm going to be utilizing this one. I'll actually probably go in between the two calculators. This is where an 84 calculator can be helpful. These are called what's called stats wizards. The notation makes a little bit more sense, whereas when we're using the Calc 83 calculator, you have to know, you have to use commas, and but it works the same way. You get the same information. So I'll come back to this calculator to kind of see and show you how to do it. All right. All right. So let's get into the actual lesson. So today we're talking about the summary stats, summary statistics, and the graphing calculator. Now, sometimes you'll hear me say the summary stats. I'll just summarize. I'll just say summary stats, and that stats part refers to these summary statistics. We will go into what everything means in the next few days, and this week. So we will learn more specifically what these values mean. All right, what is the meaning of these values? What I need you to focus on today is simply, let's learn how to find them. Let's learn how to utilize the calculator. I was dreading and thinking about this over and over and over the weekend, and how I'm going to introduce and how to do it. And I was like, all right, let's just focus. Let's get a calculator application, or let's get a calculator on our hand, and making sure that we can have an 84 access to an 83 and 84. And let's make sure we can at least find the values before we can actually use the values. Now, in stats, sometimes you have to find the values, as we're doing here. And in other parts, they will give you these values. So you're not always finding them, but then if you're given them, then there's another steps that you have to take after this fact. So for the summary stats, the first thing we need to know is what is referred to as the 5-number summary. All right, so the summary stats. What are my summary stats? My summary stats are the 5-number summary. And does anybody know what's included in the 5-number summary? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it turns out there's actually a 6th one, but we'll talk about that right afterwards. So if I ask you for the 5-number summary, does anybody know what that is referring to? I know we didn't have you do the reading. You're going to do the chapter reading tonight. That's why also we're just learning how to do it. The reading will be part of your homework tonight. So the 5-number summary includes the minimum, MIN, quartile 1, also known as Q2, the median, MAD, quartile 3, Q3, and the max. So that's the 5-number summary. Those are the first pieces that are important. The maximum, the max. The other piece of information that you need to find for the summary stats in your homework tonight is what is known as the interquartile range, IQR. And like I said, today you're not learning really, we're not spending time really what these vocabulary words mean. We're just going to learn today really how to find them. So which ones do I have to find, and then how do I find them? And there's a formula, the IQR, because your calculator will not give you this one, is equal to Q3 minus Q1. So you actually have to physically take the values that you found above and find them this way. And finally, there are two more. That is the mean. And the notation for the mean is an X with a bar, also known as X bar. That's the mean. And the standard deviation, SX. Now, technically, these are the samples. These are the sample means. Technically, this we would also refer to this as the sample mean and the sample standard deviation. The notation for population mean and population standard deviation is slightly different. But as of right now, I just need you to know that you need to find these 8 different pieces for all the data. And in your homework, all you're doing is you're going to take the data, use the calculator, and write down these 8 values, and you're practicing them. There's 4 different problems. Some of the problems have quite a bit of numbers, all right? But because I just want to make sure that you know how to input them. So that's the summary statistics. Those are all the important summary statistics that are. Now, some of you might go, what about the mode? Mode is not a summary statistic. It really does not do a good job of summarizing any information about data for us. In our course, we will be focusing on these 8 things. Now, you won't be utilizing all 8 of them all of the time. Sometimes you might be only using 2 of them, maybe 3 of them. But you need to know how to find this information if the data is given to you, which we call the raw data. If the data is given to you, how do you find this information? That's the big thing for that. We'll learn what it means. We'll learn as we go on this week, what do all of these vocabularies mean? What vocabularies word mean? We'll work towards our understanding of that. How do we apply it? How do we use it in sentences? When do we use which? All that stuff this week. Okay. So, data, quantitative data can be presented in one of 2 ways. The first one is the list. Now, the list just means they just give you all of the data. Okay, so 5, 2, 5, 8, 5, 3, 6, 5, 4. You get the data, and the data might have context. Okay, we'll have context. But let's say here's my data. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 pieces of data. This is what's called a list. It just lists out all of the data. That's the first one we're going to utilize. All right. So, the next one is called a frequency list. It lists the unique data values and the frequency, remember the amount to which they occur. So for example, on here, we have X, and well, it might have, I'll put X, but it might have context on what it is. What are the unique values that we have here? Well, they are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8. All right, these are all the values that occur. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8. How many 2s are there in the data list above? 1. Good. How many 3s?
1.
How many 4s?
1.
How many 5s?
4.
How many 6s? 1 and 1. I'll just go to that. So now this one is where a list might be just as practical. Sometimes it's, if I had, for example, 50 different numbers and a lot of them repeat. In other words, 2 different people responded, or 2 different states, 2 different people, or whoever are who's, 2 different who's, or multiples of the same who respond the same way. The frequency list can be very important. So this right here, these 2 are equivalent. This is the same as this. There are just different ways to give the data. And in your homework, and the data, you might be giving it data the first way. I give you just all the data. And then sometimes you'll get this frequency, which tells you how much of the data is. And how we input it into the calculator will differ. Entering data into TI 83/84 calculator. To enter the data into the calculator, all right, you hit the stat button, okay? Then you will select number 1, which says edit. Okay. After you've done this, you choose a list, i.e. L1, and you enter data vertically. So we're just learning how to input the data first. So our first most important piece. We're going to input the data. If we have a frequency list, let me put that as a different color. For frequency list, you will place frequencies into list next to data values. Typically that looks like L1 and L2. This is the data values. And over here in L2, right next to them, just like the table, you put in the frequencies. Now, it doesn't matter which Kappa TI 83 or 84 calculator you use, this step is all the same. So let's look at how to do that. We have this data above. Okay, we're going to use that data right there. 525853654. All right, let's say that's the data that we got. We're going to go to our application, our calculator that was given, that we've downloaded or we have physically in our hands. Okay. And the first thing we have to input data, and you're going to do this over and over and over and over in this course. You're going to hit stat. That stat button becomes one of your best friends in this course. There's another button as well that we'll get to as a starting point. You go over to you go to edit, right there in edit. You don't have to go anywhere. And that number 1, edit. If you have information in your calculator, you can go to the top of the list where it says L1 or L2 and hit the clear button. And then hit enter. Okay? Now, in your homework, I don't believe any of your homework problems require a frequency list. My recommendation is that I'm giving you 4 problems, 47, 48, 49, and problem 50 for the data. What I want you to do is I want you to, if it's to your benefit, you don't have to, but put all of the data for 47 in L1, put all of the data for 48 in L2, 49 in L3, and 50 into L4. If your answers don't match what I give you tomorrow for the solutions, you want to go there. You want to check and see if you inputted things correctly. Sometimes you might have added a 0. Sometimes you might have didn't have all the numbers written down or something like that. So what were my numbers again? I can't even remember off the top of my head. Can I get a volunteer? Just tell me the values of the data list. 5, enter. 2, enter, or I can hit the down arrow. 5, 8, 5, 3, 6, 5, 4. Now notice it says L110 and that's my blank one. So how many data points do I have? I have 9 because my last one is in row 9. The last data value I have is in row 9. So this is how I input the data in my list. Now I have the data. Okay. If instead I wanted to do it the other way, if I wanted to do this as a frequency list, I'll choose 2 lists. And I just got to remember which list I use. And I'm going to go over and I'm going to use L3 and L4, for example, right now. So I had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8. These were all my unique values. Okay. There was 1, 2. There was 1, 3. 1, 4. How many 5s were there? 4? 4, yeah. 4 5s, 1 6, and 1 8. Now, what I'm telling you here is that these 2 data sets, L1 gives you just all of the data, or L3 and L4 also give me all the data. On our next step, I'm gonna run it for both of these ones, and I'm gonna show you that our answers that we get from our graphing calculator will be the same. So, inputting data, first step, stat, edit, input the data, and how it's presented to you. Now, I do want to point out that sometimes the data is in your textbook will be chopped off. And what I mean by chopped off is that sometimes, if it's not going to want you to write down, it's not going to write down all of the data in one column just because the page isn't long enough. And you want, the textbook would be, triple the size if we try to do that. So what they do is they like shift it over and they write it right next to it and they rewrite like the title and then the values again. That's not a frequency list. That's just them organizing the data so that they can fit it on the page. All right. Finding the summary stats by TI 83/84. The calculator will find all except IQR, which needs to be found by formula IQR equals Q3 minus Q1. So the calculator is just going to find them all for you, okay? So that your calculator will do all the work. I know in your past math courses, you found the mean. You found the median. You can probably look at the data and tell me what the min is and what the max is. You've actually even done work where you found Q1 and Q3. It was on like your MCAS. So you've done this stuff by hand. But we have technology. Why do it by hand if we have technology? And you always have technology available to you in this course. So let's use the technology to find it. And instead of just finding things, but I know that's what we're doing tonight, our goal in AP Statistics is to interpret, explain. What does that mean then? That's really what's more important. So to do this, you're going to go hit Stat. You're going to go over to Calc. And then you're going to select number 1, which says 1 var stat. So it can look one of two ways. It can look like a TI-83 or a TI-84 updated with stats wizard. And you should just be comfortable however the one you looks written has it going down. So for an 83, for just a list, it's going to spit out 1 var stat and then have a parentheses. 1 var stat parentheses. And what our job into doing there is we just type in the list that we want, L1. You can get to L1 by hitting the second button and then the number. So make sure that this list, this is where data lives. List. So you might not have put your data into L1. You might have put your data into L2. Okay? Over, if you have an 84 that's been updated, or you're using the application that has it updated, then when you input the list, it's going to say list ... frequency. And just like you did on the other side, you're going to hit L1, and it's done the same way by taking and identifying that list. If your data lives in L1, and then of course, you just, well, we would just leave it blank. Because if we don't have a frequency list, basically both of them say that if you don't enter a frequency list, you're telling them you don't have a frequency list. All right. Let's practice. You'll do this lots and lots of times. That's why I'm giving you 4 problems, okay? So let's actually start with the TI-83 calculator. Or actually, I have the data over here, so I'm going to use the data over here. Now, to do the calculations, you need to quit to the home screen. You need to quit. All right, so one of the most important things that you're going to need to do is to find values, to find the summary stats. You hit second, and then quit. All right, and you should come to like a blank screen of some sort for you. All right, now that we're here, now we can find the summary stats. Now that we're at their home screen, we can find it. So we're going to hit stats. We're going to go over to calculate right there. We're going to select 1 var stats. Now, my data list, as I said, is an L1. Now, notice that it shows you L1 and it's like grayed out. This is because your graphing calculator defaults to thinking that your data is in list 1. So technically, if your data is in list 1, you can hit and you have all the data in one and it's only in L1. There's no frequency. If you just hit enter right now, or if you hit the calculate button, it's going to give you the answer. It's going to input L1, but I personally like to do it L1. So I'm going to hit the second button and hit the number 1 button, and that gives it. Common mistake I get from students, it's not working. The list isn't working. And they gave me the calculator, and the person put like alpha, and then they found the L button for the where L is, and then they put the number 1. So it's like a capital L and then a capital 1, whereas this should be a list, capital L subscript 1, which is found by hitting second and then a number. Now, if I was doing this on an 83, most of the process looks the same. I hit stat, I go to calc, I go to one var stats. Now notice it's nice here. It tells me list name, comma, frequency list. So these updated calculators are better than like what you get on your phone or on handheld ones, because it actually tells you what you have to input. So I'm gonna hit that one. And on this case, I actually have to hit, and once again, if I actually hit enter, it should run it with L1. I hate that though. So second, the number 1. You should close your parentheses, but if you didn't close your parentheses, it still would give you the right answer. And then you would hit enter, and it'll give you the information. Now, I didn't put the calculator information in there. I did it over here. So, one var stats, and you're going to tell your calculator, hey, calculator, I put the data in list 1. There's no frequency list. Calculate the one var statistics. And when I say one var statistics, it means the summary stats. Calculate. And there's my information. You're going to use the mean. The X bar stands for the mean. SX is what you're using for your standard deviation. Ignore everything else. It says N is 9 because that's how many data values I use. I had 9 data values. And then you just had to hit the down button. If you hit the down button, or scroll with your finger, then you can see that it has my values for the min, Q1, the median, Q3, and the max. There's a 4.8 and 1.7. So from the example up top, the mean, SX, or what's first listed. Then I'll find the min, Q1, the median, Q3, the max, and then the IQR. And I just find these I just copy them now, except for IQR at the very end. So my mean was 4.8, right? It's 4.8 and then 1.7. The min was 2. Q3 was 3.5. 5.5, and 8. And therefore the IQR is 5.5 minus 3.5, which is 2. This is what I'm asking you to do for your homework tomorrow. Basically, your homework should just have it written like this. It'd be like problem 47. You don't have to show me the data or anything like this. Problem 47, and you write down these 8 pieces of information. So what happens if I had a frequency list instead? And then don't worry, this is the last thing. What happens if I had a frequency list instead? Well, let me clear this. Second quit. Let me clear this, okay? I put the data in L3 and L4. So what I would do is the same thing to start off. I would hit stat, calc, one var stats. Same thing. My list, though, I'm going to clear this list. I put my data in L3 with L4 as my frequency list. And it gives me all the same information. So it doesn't matter if I present you the information as a list or a frequency list. You can use the frequency list oftentimes so it can save you from having to write a lot of values. If I had it over here on my TI-83, then I would have done L1, or I would have done L3, and then I have to hit comma L4. And that's how I would have inputted it on this calculator right here. And I have to know that L3 says those are the output values. Those were the different responses they made. L4 is a list that tells me for each of the responses how many times did they occur. So this is what you are doing for your homework. So homework number 6 comes from chapter 4, and it's 47 through 50, but you're only using the data to find the summary stats. I repeat, you are only using the data to find the summary statistics. You are not answering any of those questions, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever it is. You are not answering those questions. Right now, you are only utilizing this data that's going to give you. And some of them have like 50 numbers, okay? It's like the 50 states. I want you to practice. Yeah.
Mister, could you do me a favor?
Is it for...
You can put an A on the application on the chat.
I can't understand what you're saying.
You can put a name on the application in the chat.
The names of
on the application.
It was right there on the top. It's just really anyone. Like I said, if you need, I keep saying this, if you need help with the calculator, we're ending right now. We're gonna go over that. And if you need help, I need you to come to office hours to download an app. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay.
So this information will be posted, the video will be posted, but this is what you're doing for your homework. You are, for your homework, finding the calculator, you're using the data to find them. Now, in addition,